The distress beacon had been broadcasting for 17 cycles, and Commander Vex of the merchant vessel Starwind knew that hope was dying faster than their life support systems. Through the viewport, he could see the 3 Ravager destroyers maintaining their positions, waiting like predators for their prey to weaken just a little more. The Starwind hung dead in space, her engines crippled by the first volley of plasma fire that had caught them emerging from their jump. 500 souls aboard, traders, families, refugees from the border colonies, all trapped in a metal coffin slowly losing its battle against the void. "Commander, oxygen reserves at 12%, his second officer reported, her blue-scaled face showing the strain of their situation. "The children's ward has priority allocation, but even with that we have maybe 6 hours. Vex nodded slowly. The Ravagers knew exactly what they were doing. They would wait until desperation forced a surrender, then take everyone aboard as slaves for their mining colonies. It was their way, patient, cruel, efficient. Any response to our distress signal? Nothing, Commander. We're too far from Alliance space. The nearest patrol route is 8 days away at maximum burn. The bridge fell silent except for the wheeze of struggling air recyclers. Everyone knew what that meant. The Alliance couldn't help them. The neighboring systems were all neutral or hostile. And humans, well, human space was closest, but everyone knew humans kept to themselves unless their own interests were threatened. 3 hours passed. The temperature continued dropping as power failed in section after section. Vex watched his crew huddled together for warmth, watched parents hold their younglings close, whispering comforting lies about rescue coming soon. "Commander." The communications officer suddenly straightened, her hand pressed to her earpiece. "I'm picking up something. A jump signature, massive, heading directly for us. The Ravagers bringing in a slave hauler? No, sir, wrong frequency. This is..." Her eyes widened. "This is human military encryption." Before Vex could respond, space itself seemed to tear open 2,000 kilometers off their starboard bow. What emerged from that wound in reality made every being on the bridge freeze in shock. The human warship Retribution was not beautiful. She was 1.5 kilometers of angular gray armor, bristling with weapon systems that looked like they'd been welded on wherever there was space. Her hull showed scars from 100 battles, patches of different colored metal where repairs had been made with whatever was available. She looked like she'd been built by beings who understood war not as an art, but as a brutal necessity. The Ravager destroyers immediately began repositioning, their sleek forms pivoting to face this new threat. They outnumbered the human ship 3-1, and Ravager technology was considered superior to most species. Their commander must have been calculating odds, determining whether this unexpected arrival was worth engaging. The human ship answered that question for them. Unidentified vessels. "This is Captain James Walker of the Earth Defense Force ship Retribution. You are engaging in acts of piracy against civilians in violation of interstellar law. You have 30 seconds to withdraw or be destroyed." The transmission was in perfect Ravager dialect, though spoken with that distinctive human accent that made their consonants sound like controlled explosions. The Ravagers responded by charging their plasma cannons, a clear declaration of intent. 20 seconds. Captain Walker announced. Vex watched the Ravager lead ship launch a full spread of torpedoes, 30 deadly points of light streaking toward the human vessel. The Retribution didn't even attempt to evade. Instead, point defense lasers created a web of light that detonated every torpedo 500 meters from her hull. The explosions looked like fireworks against her shields. 10 seconds. The Ravagers opened fire with their main guns, streams of superheated plasma that could melt through a meter of reinforced armor. The beams struck the Retribution's shields, making them flare brilliant blue, but the ship kept advancing, steady and implacable. Time's up. What happened next would be debated in military academies for decades. The Retribution fired everything at once. Not in any elegant pattern or sophisticated firing solution, she simply unleashed every weapon system simultaneously in a display of overwhelming firepower that seemed to embody humanity's entire military philosophy. Railguns hurled tungsten projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Missile pods emptied their entire payloads in a single massive salvo. Laser arrays that should have been firing in sequence all triggered together, creating beams so intense they were visible through the void. And then there were weapons the Alliance database had no classification for. Some kind of magnetic accelerator that fired what looked like miniature stars. The lead Ravager destroyer took the brunt of the assault. Its shields lasted exactly 3 seconds before collapsing. The ship itself lasted 2 seconds more before being reduced to an expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris. The remaining 2 destroyers attempted to flee, their engines flaring to maximum burn. The Retribution's railguns spoke again, and one destroyer's engine array simply ceased to exist, sending the ship into an uncontrolled tumble. The third made it to minimum jump distance and began charging its drive. The human ship fired a single missile. It crossed the distance in heartbeats, struck the fleeing destroyer's jump drive, and the resulting explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The tumbling destroyer, now helpless, began broadcasting surrender on all frequencies. The Retribution moved toward it with the same steady, inexorable pace, looking less like a ship and more like an approaching natural disaster. Ravager vessel, you will power down all systems, except life support. Any attempt at resistance will result in immediate termination. Compliance is not a request. The Ravager ship went dark. Captain Walker's next transmission was directed at the Starwind. Merchant vessel, this is Retribution. We're here to help. Stand by for emergency aid. Shuttles launched from the human warship. Ugly, boxy things that looked like they'd been built in someone's garage. But they were fast and efficient, docking with the Starwind within minutes. Human emergency teams poured through the airlocks, bringing portable life support units, medical supplies, and repair equipment. Vex met the human team leader, a woman who introduced herself as Lieutenant Morrison. She was smaller than him by half a meter, with no scales, claws, or natural armor, just soft pink skin and hair the color of rust. By all appearances, she should have seemed fragile, but there was something in her eyes, a hardness that reminded him of predators he'd seen on Death Worlds. Commander Vex, we've got you covered. My teams will have your life support back online within the hour. Medical teams are already heading to your wounded. And don't worry about the Ravagers. Captain Walker is handling their prosecution. Why? Vex had to ask. We sent a distress call, but humans, your people have no obligation to us. We're not allies. We're not even trading partners. Morrison paused in her work, looking up at him with those strange human eyes. You sent a distress call. You had children aboard. That's all the reason we need. But you risked a warship, came into hostile space, started what could be an interstellar incident. Commander, she interrupted gently, you're thinking about this wrong. You're thinking like the galaxy expects us to think. Calculated, political, safe. But here's the thing about humans. We heard babies crying in the dark. Everything else became secondary. Over the next hours, Vex watched the humans work. They attacked problems with a combination of sophisticated technology and crude improvisation that shouldn't have worked but did. When a coupling proved incompatible, they didn't retreat to fabricate a proper adapter. They welded it together with what looked like construction equipment. When the medical computer couldn't process human medications for other species, they calculated dosages by hand and tested them on themselves first. Captain Walker himself came aboard once the immediate crisis had passed. He was older than Vex had expected, with gray streaking his hair and scars on his face that spoke of battles survived through will more than luck. He found Vex on the observation deck where families were gathering to watch the Retribution's crew preparing the captured Ravager ship for towing. Your people will be safe, Walker said simply. We'll escort you to Alpha Station. The Ravagers will face trial there. Captain, I have to know, how did you get here so fast? Our distress signal couldn't have reached human space in time for a response. Walker was quiet for a moment. We were already coming. 3 days ago, we picked up unusual Ravager communication traffic suggesting they were planning something in this sector. Command figured it was worth checking out. You came on a suspicion? Into neutral space, risking war with the Ravagers on just a suspicion? The human captain shrugged, a peculiarly human gesture that Vex had learned meant many things. Like I said, it was worth checking out. Good thing we did. As the small convoy began its journey to Alpha Station, the Starwind under her own repaired power, the captured Ravager vessel in tow, and the Retribution watching over them all like a scarred guardian, Vex found himself thinking about the humans differently. The galaxy had always wondered why humans built such overpowered warships, why their military doctrine favored overwhelming force over elegant precision. Now he understood. It wasn't about conquest or